Welcome to our channel, the place where dramatic, emotional, and inspirational stories are told with authenticity and passion. Today, we bring you a very special story. They blocked the black woman CEO at the Gala until she took the stage as the guest of honor. This is the powerful and unexpected journey of a brilliant black woman CEO who was first humiliated, stopped, and denied entry at a glamorous gala. But what no one knew was that she was actually the guest of honor, the one who would soon walk on stage and make the entire room rise to their feet in applause. Throughout this story, you'll witness tense moments, condescending stares, arrogant words, and then a stunning twist that will leave everyone shocked, and you completely captivated. This is not just a story about prejudice and arrogance, but a testament to perseverance, intelligence, and the unstoppable strength of a true leader. Stay with us until the end to feel every emotion, every surprise, and every powerful moment. And if you love stories full of inspiration like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next video. That night, the Grand Royal Hotel ballroom glittered under giant crystal chandeliers, casting light on dazzling gowns and crisp tuxedos. The annual charity gala was reserved for the elite, the kind of people with fortunes vast enough to buy silence, connections wide enough to own influence, and egos larger than pyramids. From the outside, it looked less like a noble fundraiser and more like a stage where power paraded itself, dripping with arrogance. At the red carpet entrance, staff in black suits stood stiff, holding thick guest lists. Guests strode past, leaving behind gasps of admiration as paparazzi cameras flashed non-stop. Luxury cars lined up, Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Ferraris, a rolling exhibition of wealth. Then, amidst this glittering crowd, a figure appeared that made the security guards glance twice. A tall black woman walked confidently forward. She wore a sleek black gown, elegant, understated. No blinding diamonds, no giant designer logos screaming for attention. But her eyes, steady, bright, commanding, were more dazzling than any jewel. "Excuse me, ma'am." One staffer raised a hand to stop her. "This event is for invited guests only. Are you sure you're in the right place?" The words were polite, but the tone dripped with suspicion and arrogance. A few nearby guests glanced back, smirking. A woman in a red gown even whispered to her friend, another one thinking she can slip in here just because she dressed decently. The woman didn't flinch. She gave a faint, amused smile, as if she were humoring a child. "My name is on the list." "Check again." The staffer skimmed the page, lips curling. "I'm afraid your name isn't here. Please step aside so you don't hold up our other distinguished guests." Behind them, a heavy-set businessman climbing out of his limousine burst into laughter. "Ha! These days, everyone thinks they can sneak into high society with a fake ticket." The air grew tense. Cameras tilted toward the scene, not to capture her beauty, but to savor her embarrassment. Yet the woman, the CEO, though no one recognized her, stood tall, shoulders steady, face unshaken. "Are you sure?" she asked calmly, her warm but commanding voice cutting through the noise, forcing silence for a brief, uneasy moment. It wasn't just a question. It was a warning. The storm was coming, and those who mocked her tonight would soon regret it. A ripple of whispers spread across the red carpet. Some photographers, sensing drama, zoomed in tighter, hungry for a shot of the woman's humiliation. A few guests smirked openly, the kind of smug grin worn by people who believe the world belongs only to them. The staffer stiffened his voice. "Ma'am, I've checked twice already. It's best you leave now before this causes any more trouble." Polite on the surface, dismissive underneath, the hulking security guards shifted forward half a step, clearly ready to escort her out. An older gentleman, his wrist weighed down by a gold watch big enough to be mistaken for a trophy, chuckled loudly. What a joke. Where do these women come from, thinking they deserve to be here? The group around him roared with laughter, arrogant laughter echoing under the chandeliers. But strangely, the woman didn't flinch. No anger, no shame. Instead, she glanced at her wristwatch, a classic Cartier, elegant and understated, and gave a faint smile, as if silently counting down the seconds until this farce ended. Just then, a sleek black limousine pulled up. The door swung open, and out stepped a powerful-looking man in his 50s. The crowd gasped. It was the chairman of the board, the very host of the gala, the man everyone was desperate to impress. He shook a few hands, then his gaze fell on the commotion at the entrance. Annoyance flickered across his face. He strode over, his voice deep and commanding. "What's going on here?" The staff froze. One stammered, "Sir, this woman, she's not on the list." The chairman turned to look at her. For a moment he froze, then recognition lit his eyes. Around them, the mocking laughter died instantly, replaced by an uneasy hush, as though the entire crowd sensed a twist was about to unfold. And in that moment, no one yet realized they were about to witness a reversal so unforgettable it would mark this gala forever. The room seemed to mute itself, as if someone had pressed the pause button. Every eye locked on the powerful man and the calm woman at the center of the storm. The chairman raised an eyebrow, then took a deliberate step closer. His words weren't a question this time. They were a declaration. "You are the guest I've been waiting for." The staffers with their guest list turned pale, faces drained of confidence. The guests who had mocked her only seconds ago stood frozen, their smug smiles stiff and hollow. One quick-thinking photographer snapped furiously, sensing history being made in front of his lens. The chairman broke into a rare smile and bowed his head respectfully. "It is an honor to have you with us. Please, our guest of honor this evening." A collective gasp echoed through the crowd. Those who had sneered were suddenly blushing, eyes darting, unsure whether to bow or vanish. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she smiled faintly and walked forward with steady grace. Her elegant black gown rippled with each step, proof that true confidence needed no diamonds, no glittering labels to shine. From the crowd, a stunned whisper rose. "My God!" "She's the CEO of Starwell Global." The name hit the room like thunder. The gala erupted. The same people who had dismissed her minutes ago now scrambled to get closer, desperate to shake her hand, to smile, to pretend they had never laughed. But her gaze swept over them coldly, slicing through their fakery like a blade. Moments earlier, they had underestimated her. Now the entire gala would rise, because she was the very soul of the evening. Music drifted softly from inside, an elegant symphony that now felt like nothing more than background to the stunning reversal unfolding. The black woman CEO, the same woman dismissed at the entrance, now entered the ballroom like royalty. Each step she took made the chandeliers blaze brighter, as if the lights themselves declared, "True power isn't skin color or glittering jewels. It's courage and brilliance." The banquet tables sparkled with wine glasses and polished silverware. As she walked in, many scrambled to their feet, faking warmth and welcome. But her eyes swept across the room, memorizing every face, the ones who had mocked her, the ones who had whispered about her. Now their fake smiles looked like a bad play performed under harsh spotlight. The woman in the red gown, the very one who had sneered earlier, raised her glass with trembling hands, voice cracking. It's such an honor to have you here tonight." The CEO's smile came, but not kindly. It was the kind of smile that said, "I remember every word, every look." The chairman guided her to the place of honor, the seat right by the stage, reserved for the star of the night. As she sat down, the entire hall rose to its feet, clapping thunderously. The applause wasn't just welcome. It was guilt, desperation, and awe tangled together. She smiled, her eyes glowing beneath the chandeliers. In that moment, she knew this was only the beginning. And soon, when she stepped on that stage, the gala would witness shocks far greater than anyone could imagine. The ballroom slowly settled, but the tension still hung thick in the air. The woman, the CEO everyone had just realized they underestimated, sat calmly, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Fake smiles, overly warm greetings, nervous chuckles. All of it looked like cheap masks to her. Dinner began. Red wine swirled in crystal glasses, exquisite appetizers were served. The orchestra played softly, but no one truly listened. All eyes kept drifting toward her, waiting, restless, wondering when she would take the stage. A young businessman seated nearby, who had smirked outside just minutes ago, leaned in. trying to recover. "I've heard so much about you. It's wonderful to finally meet in person." She turned to him, her voice steady, her gaze like steel. "Really? Funny I seem to recall you." Laughing at the door, his face flushed crimson. He dropped his eyes into his glass of wine, suddenly very interested in its contents. Around the table, the tension sharpened. No one dared say a word. Then the chairman rose with a microphone, his commanding voice booming across the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we gather not only to raise funds for a noble cause, but also to honor a remarkable individual, a leader who has inspired thousands of employees, created tens of thousands of jobs, and redefined how the world sees women in power. Please welcome our guest of honor." The spotlight swung directly to her table. Every gaze turned. The room fell silent. She rose to her feet. A smile spread across her lips, not to hide anything, but to declare something. A smile that made those who had doubted her lower their heads. And as she began walking toward the stage, each step echoed like the opening drumbeat of a revolution about to unfold. Her heels clicked against the polished wooden floor, each step echoing through the hushed hall. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath, watching her advance. The same eyes that had once dismissed her now followed her nervously, half curious, half afraid, as if they knew they were about to pay for their arrogance. She climbed the steps to the stage. The spotlight washed over her face, highlighting not just beauty, but a proud defiance that could not be dimmed. She stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes blazing with a fire that seemed unstoppable. Applause began, hesitant at first, scattered, then louder, until the entire room was on its feet. A standing ovation. Not purely admiration, but also guilt, desperation, and fear disguised as praise. The very people who had mocked her clapped now as if their lives depended on it. She reached the podium. Resting one hand lightly on the microphone, she waited. Silence thickened until even the faintest sound could be heard. Her voice rang out, warm, steady, but sharp as steel. "I remember, just a few minutes ago, there were those who thought I didn't belong here, that I wasn't worthy of this place." Several faces dropped instantly, eyes darting away. Pretending to adjust napkins or sip wine, her smile returned, not angry, but razor-edged. "But isn't it fascinating? How what people assume about me is the exact opposite of the truth. I don't just belong here. I am the reason this gala matters tonight." The words cracked through the room like thunder. No one dared move. No one dared breathe. In that instant, every light in the hall belonged to her, and everyone knew the real performance was only just beginning. She paused, letting the heavy silence linger just a little longer. Her gaze swept over the crowd, from seasoned politicians to fame-hungry businessmen, and finally to the reporters with their cameras trained on her. All of them waiting, restless, uncertain. "I've heard this line more times than I can count," she began, her words deliberate, her tone unshakable. "That a black woman can't lead, that we should stay in our place." A murmur rippled through one corner of the hall, but quickly died as she leaned closer to the mic, her eyes glowing with fire, and every single time I heard that, it only made me more determined to prove the opposite. I started in a tiny apartment with 4 bare walls and an old table. I was denied loans. I was laughed out of boardrooms just like this one, but I never quit. A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, perhaps remembering that they themselves had once been the ones to doubt, to mock, to dismiss. Her voice grew stronger, cutting through the air. "Today, my company provides jobs for over 30,000 people. We don't just generate profit, we create opportunity. We've proven that talent and determination rise above prejudice." This time, the applause came loud and raw, not out of courtesy but from genuine emotion. Eyes glistened, especially those of younger women in the room. They looked at her not just as a CEO, but as a beacon of what was possible. She smiled, let the weight of her words settle, and closed her opening statement. "And if anyone still wonders whether I deserve to stand here tonight, remember this: I am the very reason this gala can claim to be glorious." The hall erupted in thunderous applause, a roar that shook the chandeliers. The applause thundered across the room, yet behind the noise, a few faces remained stiff, their smiles strained. Some clapped politely, but their eyes betrayed discomfort. They knew her presence tonight wasn't just about honor, it was a challenge, a warning. In the back row, a notorious real estate mogul sat with arms crossed, scowling. He leaned to his neighbor and muttered, "If she keeps going, this whole room will forget who really holds the power here." But then her eyes swept over him, piercing, commanding. He straightened instantly, tugging at his tie, faking composure. She spoke again, her tone sharp yet tinged with playful irony. "Funny thing, isn't it? The very people who tried to block my path ended up fueling my determination to go further. If not for their laughter, I might never have fought so hard. So to those who mocked me outside earlier, thank you." Laughter broke out across the tables, this time not cruel but sheepish, embarrassed, mixed with admiration. Several guests flushed, remembering all too clearly their roles in that little farce. She lifted her chin, her voice unwavering, eyes shining. "I am not here to seek revenge. I am here to prove that no one has the right to define another's worth by skin color, by gender, or by prejudice. And I hope that from this night forward, no young woman will ever again be told, 'You don't belong here.'" The words landed heavy, pulling the entire hall into silence. Then came the third wave of applause, deafening, sincere, from the heart this time. A reporter whispered under his breath, "Tomorrow, this will be front page everywhere," and he was right. No one in that ballroom realized they had just witnessed a moment destined to become history. After the roaring applause faded, the ballroom settled into a tense hush. The mood wasn't just respect anymore. It was anticipation, curiosity laced with nerves. People thought, "She's already struck so hard with her words. What else could she possibly reveal?" She stood tall behind the podium, one hand resting lightly on the mic. Then her smile shifted, playful, knowing, as if she held a secret the room wasn't prepared to hear. "I know many of you are wondering why I was chosen as the guest of honor tonight. Is it simply because I'm a successful Black woman CEO? No. The real reason goes far beyond that." The room froze. Reporters leaned forward, lenses clicking faster. Businessmen shifted in their chairs, hungry for the truth. Her voice rang out, each word cutting sharp. "You didn't invite me here just to speak. You invited me because I am the largest sponsor of this gala." A collective gasp surged across the hall. Shock rippled like a wave. The very people who had believed themselves the center of attention suddenly felt small, irrelevant. She leaned in, eyes blazing. "And I am not here to brag. I am here because I believe this charity fund will transform countless lives. But I also came to deliver one clear message. Never underestimate anyone, simply because they don't look like you." The room erupted again. Some guests leapt to their feet in genuine admiration, yet others turned pale, realizing that in just a few sentences she had stripped away their power and claimed it as her own. The applause still echoed when icy glances began to spread through the room. Though most of the guests admired her, respected her, a handful of faces revealed irritation. For them, a Black woman CEO not only honored, but revealed as the largest sponsor felt like a slap across their swollen egos. At a table to the right, Harold, a conservative banking magnate, leaned to his colleague and muttered, "She's turning tonight into her personal stage. Absolutely disgraceful." The colleague nodded cautiously, though he kept clapping, unwilling to draw attention. Meanwhile, a young journalist near the press section scribbled feverishly, her eyes glowing. She knew she had just landed a headline-making story. A Black woman CEO stopped at the door, then minutes later crowned the shining centerpiece of the gala. On stage, the CEO stood calm, as if she had expected every look. Admiration, resentment, even the quiet plotting she could sense forming in the shadows. She continued, "I am not here to steal the spotlight. I am here to share my belief that when we invest in our communities, we don't just change other people's lives, we change the world we all live in." The applause rolled again. Yet beneath it, Harold clenched his jaw, filling his glass with wine. A thought sharpened in his mind. Let's see how long she stands when certain doors start closing on her. Meanwhile, among the audience, A cluster of young women exchanged quiet glances, their eyes brimming with inspiration. They weren't just seeing a CEO, they were seeing a symbol. And they knew this night would mark the beginning of profound changes in their own paths. The ballroom settled after the applause, but the atmosphere had shifted. Beneath the glitter of chandeliers, clashing emotions churned like an undercurrent. In a shadowed corner, Harold huddled with a few like-minded businessmen. He set his wineglass down, voice low but icy. "We can't let her monopolize the spotlight. If this keeps up, our influence will vanish into thin air." One man frowned nervously. "And what do you propose?" "She just proved she's the largest sponsor. Cross her now and we'll look like fools." Harold smirked, his eyes glinting with calculation. No one is untouchable. A few old rumors resurfaced, a couple of papers willing to cooperate, and this perfect image of hers will crumble fast. Meanwhile, on stage, the CEO carried on, unaware of the schemes brewing below. She spoke of community projects, scholarships for underprivileged kids, training centers her company had built. Each word landed like an arrow, striking straight into people's hearts. A young intern in the audience wiped tears from her cheeks. Several junior employees clapped so hard their palms reddened. Yet at certain tables, silence reigned, cold, stiff. The seeds of resentment were already taking root. Harold and his circle were plotting their counterattack. Then, as she paused for breath, a hand shot up from the middle rows. A man with a sharp tone called out, "Excuse me, but how can we be sure what you're saying is even true?" The room froze. The warmth of moments ago collapsed into a sudden, tense chill. A wave of murmurs swept through the ballroom. All eyes turned to the man who had spoken. He wore a gray suit, nothing remarkable, yet his tone carried a chilling defiance. The CEO lifted her head, her smile steady. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she let silence stretch, long enough to turn the man into the center of unwanted attention. Just seconds, but to him it felt like an eternity. Then she spoke, her voice crisp and calm. "You want proof? I won't give you fancy words. I'll give you facts," she signaled to the staff backstage. Instantly, the massive screen behind her lit up, displaying images and numbers, schools built, training centers opened, tens of thousands of scholarships awarded, and clear financial reports of her company's contributions. The audience gasped. Some even rose from their chairs for a better look. These weren't empty claims. They were undeniable evidence. The man in the gray suit flushed red, stammering for words that wouldn't come. Laughter rippled through the room, but this time it wasn't aimed at her, it was aimed at him. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "I've grown used to doubt, and I always prepare for it. But make no mistake, I don't prove myself to protect my image. I prove myself to protect the faith of those who have placed their trust in me." Applause thundered again, louder than before. Some guests leapt to their feet, shouting, "Bravo!" Meanwhile, in the shadows, Harold narrowed his eyes and gripped his glass. His scheme had been crushed before it could take shape. But he wasn't done. This battle was only just beginning. After her powerful speech, the ballroom still buzzed with applause. But in certain corners, the air had grown heavy, thick with resentment. Men like Harold couldn't stomach the humiliation of being silenced in front of hundreds. His hand trembled around his glass, the wine swirling like the fury boiling inside him. When the stage lights shifted to a musical performance, Harold quietly slipped away, followed by a circle of loyal businessmen. They gathered in the lounge behind the ballroom, the dim amber lighting cloaking their grim expressions. "She's overshadowing all of us," Harold growled, slamming his cigar into the ashtray. "If this continues, every contract, every opportunity will funnel straight into her company." A bald man, head of a pharmaceutical empire, added, "The press is in love with her right now. If that image spreads, we'll have no ground left." Harold's lips curled into a thin smile, his eyes sharp as blades. "Fine. If the press can build a star, the press can also destroy one. I have friends in the biggest papers. A few smear lines, a few anonymous sources, and she's finished." The group nodded. A cunning young executive chuckled. "And if there's nothing to dig up from her past, we'll just create something." Dark laughter echoed in the haze of cigar smoke. Outside, music soared, and the ballroom celebrated the black woman CEO as if she were royalty. But in the shadows, the first traps had already been set, preparing for a ruthless counterattack. She had no idea yet. Behind her shining triumph, the darkness had already begun to move, while schemes brewed in the shadows backstage. Inside the ballroom, the celebration rolled on. A famous singer performed, champagne glasses clinked, laughter sparkled beneath the golden chandeliers. Yet beneath the glamour, a storm cloud had quietly slipped in. Just as the performance ended, the gala's MC suddenly appeared on stage, holding a white envelope. His face was tense, though he forced a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received some urgent information regarding tonight's guest of honor." The room fell silent. Every gaze fixed on him. The MC hesitated, unfolded the papers, and read aloud, his voice trembling. "It claims that our guest of honor was once involved in an undisclosed financial scandal." The atmosphere dropped like a stone. Whispers exploded across the room like a hive of angry bees. Reporters snapped their cameras furiously. Some guests exchanged glances, their eyes flickering with hidden satisfaction. At the back, Harold lifted his glass, wearing a smug, triumphant grin. All the spotlights swung toward the CEO. In that instant, every eye locked onto her. Hungry for the spectacle of a downfall, but instead of panic, she rose calmly. She walked to the stage, took the microphone from the MC, her face serene, lips curling into a cold smile. "I suppose. The game has begun." The room froze. Her words weren't just a reaction, they were a challenge. And in that moment, the battle between her and the powers in the shadows had officially erupted. The ballroom rippled with whispers, as if a bomb had just gone off in the middle of the gala. Camera flashes popped, phones secretly recorded every second. From the back rows, some smirked, muttering, "Told you." No one's perfect, but on stage the CEO stood firm, unshaken. Her gaze swept across the hall, her calm smile only intensifying the tension. "Isn't it interesting?" she began, her voice clear and commanding. "How urgent scandals always seem to surface the very moment a black woman takes the stage in triumph." Gasps broke out, mingling with hushed murmurs. She pressed on, every word sharp. "Are you waiting for a fall? Hoping for a dramatic collapse? I'm sorry to disappoint you. I have never and will never allow myself to be dragged down by baseless rumors." She gestured to the crew. Instantly, the big screen behind her lit up with documents, independently audited financial reports, transparency certifications from international watchdogs, and news features praising her company's achievements. This, ladies and gentlemen, is fact. And those anonymous scraps of paper, nothing more than the childish tricks of those afraid of change. The hall erupted in thunderous applause, louder, fiercer than before. Guests rose to their feet, some shouting, "Bravo!" In the shadows, Harold's face darkened, his hand clenched so tight his glass trembled. Meanwhile, the CEO tilted her head, her eyes gleaming like blades. "If anyone wants to turn tonight into a game, I am ready to play. But remember this, I am the one who makes the rules." The words landed like a strike of lightning. What was supposed to be a glamorous gala had become a battlefield where true power was finally laid bare. The applause thundered on, echoing off the gilded walls of the ballroom. The MC, who had earlier looked rattled, now stood frozen, his eyes filled with awe and respect. Guests who had been cautious or neutral rose to their feet, swept into the wave of cheers. Meanwhile, her opponents faltered. The man in the gray suit, the one who had thrown out the challenge, was now crimson-faced, slinking back into his seat. Some reporters who had been eager to capture her downfall now rushed to snap photo after photo of her triumph, recognizing an unshakable icon rising before them. In the shadows, Harold clenched his jaw so tightly his face was rigid. He muttered just loud enough for his allies to hear, "She's sharper than I thought." But don't think this is over. Yet even his allies shifted uneasily. One man quietly slid his chair a few inches away. Another avoided his glare by pretending to check his phone. The cracks in his faction were obvious. The tide of loyalty was drifting toward her side. On stage, the CEO raised her head high, letting the hall roar around her. Applause mixed with shouts of encore from younger guests. She lifted her hand, signaling for quiet, then spoke, her voice steady, warm, yet commanding. Thank you for your trust. Tonight isn't just about defending my honor. It's about all of us standing together, for truth, for justice, and for the future. This applause was different. No longer polite, no longer guilty. It was applause born of belief, of admiration. As the stage lights dimmed softly, everyone in the room understood. She hadn't just won tonight's gala. She had won their hearts, and her enemies, though still lurking, had already lost the most vital weapon of all, public support. The gala ended in glittering lights and cheerful music, but beyond the gilded walls, another battle had already begun. As luxury cars pulled away from the Grand Royale, Harold sat in his black Bentley. His face twisted with rage, he grabbed his phone. His voice hoarse with wine but sharp as ice. I want a meeting with the council first thing tomorrow. It's time we bring some political cards into play. A deep voice on the other end hesitated. Are you sure? Politics isn't the same as a smear campaign. This will be open war. Harold's eyes narrowed, watching the city lights streak past his window. Good. I want her torn down before this hero image of hers cements itself with the public. Meanwhile, the CEO left the hotel through a private exit, slipping past the swarm of reporters at the front. In the car, she kicked off her heels and exhaled softly. Her face remained calm, but deep in her eyes she knew the storm was far from over. Her young, sharp-witted assistant turned to her and whispered, "Do you think they'll stop now?" The CEO let out a small laugh, half ironic, half daring. Stop? No, they'll hit back harder, and we need to be ready for the real battle, one that won't just be fought in ballrooms, but in the political arena. The car glided into the night, leaving the bright lights of the gala behind. Ahead lay a different kind of spotlight, one that promised a far fiercer war, where money, power, and honor would collide. The next morning, the city woke up to screaming headlines splashed across newspapers: Black woman CEO, guest of honor or fraud, financial scandal rumors resurface, powerful female leader under the microscope. News stations aired the story non-stop, not with facts, but with insinuations, seeding doubt. Footage from the gala, specifically the moment the MC read the urgent note, looped endlessly, edited with suggestive commentary. Inside the top-floor office of Starwell headquarters, the CEO sat quietly before a wall of screens. Her assistant hurried in, dropping a stack of newspapers onto the desk. Look at this. They're turning last night into a media storm. She picked up one paper, scanning it with a faint smile. Harold moved faster than I expected. The head of communications entered, voice tight with concern. We need an immediate rebuttal, ma'am. If this narrative spreads unchecked, our reputation could take serious damage. The CEO folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. A rebuttal is easy, but that's exactly what they want, to drag us into a swamp of back and forth. We can't play by their rules. Her assistant blinked in surprise. Then what do we do? She rose, walking to the massive window overlooking the city humming with rumors. Her voice was calm but resolute. We won't just respond. We'll expose their entire game. And when the truth comes out, the ones behind this won't have anywhere left to hide. Elsewhere, Harold sat in a private conference room with his allies. He grinned smugly, tapping his fingers on the table. Let the media do the first strike. Then we'll release evidence. When that hits, she won't recover. The battle was no longer about a gala. It had become a full-blown media war, where truth and lies would collide before the eyes of the world. That morning, while the media still swirled with half-truths and rumors, the CEO called an emergency board meeting. All senior executives were present, the air so tense that no one dared speak first. She entered with calm composure, as if no storm raged outside. Dropping a thick folder on the table, she looked each director squarely in the eye. They want us to react recklessly. But instead of playing defense, we'll go on the offensive. The head of communications frowned nervously. Do you mean a press release? She shook her head. No, we'll go further. We'll publish every financial record we have, every cent, so transparent that no one can question us. And more importantly, I'll reveal the names of the competitors who have repeatedly tried to block our community projects. The room froze. The CFO muttered uneasily, "That will anger some very powerful players." Her lips curved into a calm, fierce smile, eyes blazing. Exactly. If they want a war, let the world see who's truly been hiding in the shadows. That afternoon, a surprise press conference was called. Before a sea of reporters, she appeared in a pristine white suit, radiating transparency and pride. "I know there are rumors circulating. So instead of denying them with words, today I am publishing every financial record of my company, along with the full list of community projects we've delivered. And here is the list of corporations that have actively tried to block us from building schools and hospitals for the underserved." The press hall erupted. Cameras flashed, journalists shouted, stories rewrote themselves in real time, from doubting the CEO to who is trying to stop her. In his private office, Harold slammed the table, his face crimson with fury. He had never expected her to drag everyone into the light. And for the first time, some of his allies began to waver, realizing that siding with him might now brand them as villains in the public eye. Within 24 hours of the press conference, the story exploded across borders. Major outlets in Europe and the US splashed her image on front pages, dressed in her white suit, holding up the transparency files. Headlines blared, "A new icon of corporate integrity. Black woman CEO challenges the giants. Truth and courage triumph." International news networks replayed her defiant words. "If they want war, I will show the world who's been hiding in the shadows." The line became a rallying cry, spreading across social media like wildfire. Millions of supportive comments flooded in. Many hailed her as the most inspiring woman of the decade. Meanwhile, Harold's faction began to fracture. Corporations that once stood with him scrambled to back out, terrified of being named in her blacklist. Some even issued public apologies to the CEO, desperate to avoid public backlash. Harold, enraged, smashed a crystal ashtray against his desk. He roared at the few allies still clinging to him. "Cowards! You fear a woman more than you fear me?" But his question was met only with downcast eyes and silence. He realized his power was slipping through his fingers faster than sand through a sieve. At Starwell headquarters, the CEO stood by the glass window, watching the city lights glitter below. Her phone rang. It was an international news network inviting her for a prime-time live interview. She smiled, her voice calm but resolute. "Tell them I'm ready." It's time the world heard the full truth. That night, the world seemed to tune into a single screen. The primetime live interview aired on America's biggest news network and was streamed globally. Viewers from New York to London, Paris to Tokyo, sat glued to their screens, waiting to hear from the woman who had turned a gala into a media earthquake. On set, the lights were soft but sharp. The host, a veteran journalist known for his cutting, no-nonsense style, introduced her. "Tonight, we welcome a very special guest. A woman who has shaken the worlds of finance and politics. Please welcome the CEO of Starwell Global." She walked out in a deep blue suit, elegant yet powerful. Applause roared from the live studio audience, echoed by millions watching at home. The journalist wasted no time. "You know, many are calling you a hero, but others argue you're simply crafting an image to win public sympathy. What do you say to that?" She sat tall, smiling calmly. "I don't need to call myself a hero. I'm doing what should be common practice: transparency, honesty, and putting community above profit. If that makes some people uncomfortable, perhaps they should take a hard look at themselves." The crowd erupted in applause. Even the seasoned host paused a beat, caught off guard. He pressed further. "But don't you think revealing the names of corporations that blocked your community projects has put you into a direct political confrontation?" Her eyes locked on the camera, steady, fierce. "I don't think so. I know so, and I accept it. Because if the truth makes certain powerful people lose sleep, then I'm clearly on the right path." The line exploded across Twitter, Facebook, every platform. The hashtag #SomeoneSheIsTheTruth trended worldwide within minutes. That night, she was no longer just a successful CEO. She had become a global symbol of courage and justice in the eyes of millions. While social media erupted with "Absolument she is the truth," in a dark corner of the city, Harold seethed inside a private war room. A giant screen replayed the CEO's interview, every word slicing into his pride. "The whole world cheers for her," Harold snarled. "And us? If this keeps up, every deal, every ounce of power will flow straight into Starwell's hands." An older senator, a longtime ally, tapped his fingers slowly on the table. "Don't forget, politics decides the real game. The press may adore her today, but all it takes is a congressional inquiry, and her image will collapse overnight." A businessman added eagerly, "I have contacts in the Financial Oversight Committee. If we inflate the so-called financial scandal, they'll launch an investigation. Even if nothing is found, public trust will waver." Harold's lips curled into a cruel smile, his eyes glinting. "Perfect. We'll use the system itself against her. If rumors can't take her down, we'll bury her in legal and political quicksand." Meanwhile, at Starwell headquarters, her assistant rushed in, clutching a tablet. "Word is, some senators are discussing opening an inquiry into our company." The CEO showed no shock. She set down her coffee cup, her smile cold, razor sharp. "Exactly as expected. They think the word investigation will frighten me, but I welcome it, because once every file is opened, we'll see who truly has dirt to hide." Beyond the glass windows, the city blazed with nightlights. But inside her, another fire had ignited. The greatest political battle of her career was just beginning. The news hit like a bomb. Congress launches official investigation into Starwell Global. Every network aired it, showing senators filing into the hearing chamber, thick folders stacked neatly on their desks. On the first day of the hearing, tension weighed heavy inside the U.S. Capitol. Reporters crowded the hallway, cameras flashing at the chamber doors, waiting for the CEO's arrival. Then the doors opened. She entered in a sleek black suit, her face calm, her eyes blazing. Cameras fired in rapid bursts, but she didn't flinch. The room seemed to hold its breath. A conservative senator spoke first, his tone sharp. "You stand accused of concealing suspicious financial expenditures. What do you have to say?" She slowly placed a thick dossier in front of her, smiling faintly. "Sir, I'm not here to evade. I am here to lay everything bare, and here are every audited financial report from the last 10 years. The chamber rippled with whispers. Some senators flipped through the pages quickly, their surprise evident as they saw every figure transparent and precise. Another senator, clearly aligned with Harold, leaned forward, frowning. "But the media has reported black funds. How do you explain that?" Her gaze locked on him, unblinking. "It's easy to create false headlines, Senator. But it's hard to deny facts sitting right in front of you. If you wish, I am prepared to have independent auditors testify here, today." The chamber erupted. Outside, the press flashed breaking news banners. "CEO challenges Congress, absolute transparency." In the shadows of the room, Harold sat with arms crossed, his face darkening. He hadn't expected her to meet the accusations with such unshakable confidence. And for the first time, doubt crept into the minds of those who had believed she could be brought down. The hearing chamber buzzed with whispers, tension rising like a storm. Some senators shifted uneasily, while outside the press relayed every moment in real time. But the CEO wasn't finished. Calmly, she reached for another folder from her leather briefcase. Flipping it open, she looked squarely at the panel of senators, her voice ringing with authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, I did not come here simply to defend myself. I came to reveal the full truth. While my company has been accused falsely, it is in fact certain corporations, those aligned with some of you, who are the real financial manipulators." The chamber gasped. A few senators shot to their feet, shouting, "Outrageous! Baseless slander!" But she only smiled coldly, holding the file high. "These are the records, shadowy transfers from political action funds, shell contracts worth hundreds of millions. The paper trail is clear, and if you wish, I am prepared to make this public, right now." Camera shutters exploded. Reporters shouted over one another, "Where's the proof?" Release it! The gavel pounded for order, but it was too late. The story had already broken free, spreading like wildfire. In the corner, Harold's face drained of color. He had never imagined she would dare drag political powers into the light. Some of his longtime allies began to slide back in their chairs, avoiding eye contact, terrified of being exposed next. The CEO lifted her chin, her words slicing through the uproar. If anyone hoped to make me a victim of their power games, remember this: I don't play to lose. I play so the truth wins. The chamber erupted, and for the first time in history, a congressional hearing became a stage where a black woman CEO openly challenged the entire machinery of power. The next morning, the world awoke to a media earthquake. From Washington to Paris, New York to Nairobi, every major outlet splashed the image of the CEO standing tall at the congressional hearing, holding her files aloft under blinding lights. The New York Times ran the headline, "Black Woman, CEO Faces Congress and Turns the Tables." Le Monde called her La Dame de la Vérité, the Lady of Truth. Across Africa, television anchors hailed her as a source of pride, proof of the strength of women of color on the global stage. On social media, clips from the hearing spread at lightning speed. Her words, "I don't play to lose. I play so the truth wins," became a rallying cry, printed on t-shirts, banners, even posters on city streets. Hashtags, Tacha Truth Wins and Tacha She is the Truth shot straight to the top worldwide. Youth groups rallied, treating her as a symbol of justice and transparency. Small marches erupted in cities across the globe, with chants echoing, "We stand with the truth." Meanwhile, in a private office, Harold watched the news, cold sweat dripping down his temple. He knew the battlefield had shifted. This was no longer just about politics or business. It had become a global movement, and once public opinion had chosen her side, any attack from his camp would likely backfire. At the top floor of Starwell headquarters, the CEO quietly gazed out the window at crowds gathering below, waving banners with her name. She smiled softly, pride and determination gleaming in her eyes. This is no longer just my story. This is our story. Harold had never tasted such bitter defeat. Sitting in a darkened room, surrounded by screens replaying images of the CEO celebrated worldwide, his bloodshot eyes burned with fury. His voice cracked as he barked, "If we let this continue, she'll crush us all. We need one final strike." A timid aide whispered, "But sir, the public is already on her side." "Any strike now could—" "Silence," Harold roared. "Then we attack her personally. Find me a witness. One accusation is enough. True or not doesn't matter. We must shatter her image once and for all." Days later, media outlets exploded with a shocking revelation. A man claiming to be a former Starwell employee accused the CEO of abusing power, even embezzlement. Networks loyal to Harold ran the story nonstop, plastering sensational headlines. At first, the public buzzed. Critics smirked, believing they had finally found a crack in her armor. But within hours, independent journalists dug up the truth. The so-called witness had never appeared in Starwell's employee records. He was, in fact, a contract actor, hired by a shady media firm with direct ties to Harold. The backlash was immediate and volcanic. Where once people simply admired her, now they rallied in outrage against corruption. Protests swelled larger. New banners rose high. "We believe her. Truth can't be bought." In his office, Harold hurled a remote against the wall, his face drained of color. His final dirty trick had not only failed, it had backfired, branding him the villain in the eyes of the world. At Starwell, the CEO only allowed herself a faint smile when she heard the news. "I told them." Truth always wins. This time, public outrage didn't stop at hashtags or small marches. It erupted into a worldwide movement. In New York, thousands filled Times Square, holding banners that read, "Truth wins." In Paris, crowds beneath the Eiffel Tower chanted her name in unison. In Johannesburg, students wore T-shirts with the CEO's face, calling her a symbol of African pride. The global press dubbed it the Starwell effect. A prominent BBC commentator declared, "She hasn't just defended her company. She's sparked a worldwide movement for transparency, justice, and the voices of women of color." Even corporations, once hesitant, scrambled to show support. Young politicians who had previously stayed silent now stepped forward. We stand with the truth. Inside Starwell headquarters, the CEO quietly watched live footage streaming in from around the world. Tears glistened at the corners of her eyes, but her smile was radiant. She turned to her assistant and said, "This is no longer the fight of one person or one company. This is the voice of an entire generation." Elsewhere, Harold sat frozen, watching everything unravel. Allies abandoned him, contracts collapsed, his political clout disintegrated. He slumped in his chair, realizing the game was lost. In stark contrast, the CEO was embraced as a living symbol. Her story no longer ended with a hearing. It had opened a new chapter, one of justice, truth, and hope for millions. 1 week later, the central square in Washington overflowed with people. Hundreds of thousands had gathered, carrying flags, banners, and T-shirts emblazoned with her words, "Truth will win." This was no longer just a protest. It had become a celebration of hope. On a stage set before the U.S. Capitol, the CEO stepped forward. The roar that greeted her shook the ground, a wave of applause and chants of her name. The moment was broadcast live across global networks, watched by millions. She raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. Her voice rang out, steady and powerful. "I entered this fight to defend my honor and my company. But today, looking out at all of you, I realize this is no longer my story alone. This is our story of people who refuse to live without justice and transparency." The crowd erupted again, chanting, "Truth wins." "Truth wins?" Her eyes blazed as she pressed on. "They tried to bury me with rumors, with politics, with filth. But they forgot one truth. The truth cannot be bought. And when truth stands with us, no power can defeat us." Thousands of phones were lifted high, capturing the moment. On social media, messages poured in. One leader, one symbol, one global movement. She closed her speech with a call to action. "Let this not end with my story. Let us turn this into change, real change, for a world that is fairer for everyone." The crowd exploded, chants rolling like thunder across the square, fireworks and confetti filling the sky. And in that moment, the world knew. A new symbol had truly been born. The Truth Wins movement had grown far beyond banners and chants in the streets. Within months, it became the spark for sweeping global change. In Washington, a new corporate transparency bill was introduced, nicknamed the Starwell Act. It required corporations to disclose detailed financial records, blocking the hidden funds often used to manipulate politics. Many senators who once opposed her now had no choice but to support it, with the world's eyes watching. In Europe, the EU convened an emergency summit on anti-corruption, citing the CEO's speech as direct inspiration. In Africa, governments launched scholarship programs in her name, seeing her as a beacon encouraging young women to step into business and politics. On social media, millions shared their own stories, workers standing up against injustice, young entrepreneurs pledging to run their businesses with integrity, all tagged with "Truth Wins." At Starwell headquarters, the CEO quietly read headlines about a movement that had grown far beyond her own influence. Her assistant entered, placing a new folder on her desk. "They want you at the United Nations Anti-Corruption Summit, and many are calling you the woman who changed the world." She smiled softly, her eyes shining with pride, yet weighted with responsibility. "I never set out to be a symbol. I only wanted to defend the truth. But if the world needs me in that role, then I will not back down." Outside, posters emblazoned with "Truth Wins" covered city streets. And in the hearts of millions, there was one shared belief. This was only the beginning of a new era. The United Nations Hall in New York had never felt so electric. Flags of nearly 200 nations waved outside, while inside, World leaders, business executives, and hundreds of journalists filled every seat. All waited for a moment that would be etched into history. The CEO stepped onto the podium, the glare of dozens of cameras illuminating her calm yet commanding face. Dressed in a pristine white suit, she looked every inch both a leader and a living symbol. Thunderous applause erupted as she placed her folder on the podium. She raised her hand for silence, then began, "Ladies and gentlemen, I do not stand here today merely as a CEO. I stand here as a global citizen, as a woman who was once blocked at the doors of a gala because of her skin color, but still walked onto the stage to defend the truth." Camera flashes lit up the hall. Every ear strained as her words struck like iron on stone. We live in a world where greed and power too often overshadow justice. But if one individual, armed only with transparency and courage, can ignite hope in millions, imagine what we could do if all of us stood together. Applause erupted, many delegates rising to their feet. Some leaders exchanged heavy looks. They knew this was more than a speech. It was a call to action. She ended with words sharp and resolute. Truth does not belong to one person. It belongs to all of us, and only by defending truth can we truly defend the future of humanity. The entire hall rose in unison, applause crashing like thunder. The broadcast reached millions of homes worldwide, where countless viewers wept as they witnessed history unfold. The UN speech lit a fire that fueled real, tangible change. Within weeks, governments around the world announced reforms. In the United States, Congress passed the Starwell Act, requiring all major corporations to publish regular financial reports. With heavy penalties for concealment, news outlets called it an unprecedented transparency revolution. In Europe, the EU launched the Open Ledger Initiative, using blockchain to track public spending, directly inspired by the Truth Wins movement. In Africa, several nations established She is the Truth scholarships to support young women entering business and politics. Multinational corporations, long accustomed to hiding in the shadows, scrambled to adjust. CEOs across industries publicly pledged transparency, knowing the public had awakened, and silence was no longer an option. Grassroots movements bloomed worldwide, workers demanding fair wages, students rallying against corruption, citizens insisting on government accountability. All marched beneath banners bearing a simple phrase, "Truth wins." At Starwell headquarters, the CEO received hundreds of letters from ordinary people. A young girl from Brazil wrote, "I want to grow up to be like you, never afraid to speak the truth." A factory worker in India sent thanks. "Your movement gave us the courage to fight injustice." She read each one, tears glistening but a smile on her lips. She knew these changes weren't born from one speech alone. They were born from millions of hearts beating together. And now, the world had truly turned a new page. Late one evening, after months of storms and triumphs, the CEO sat alone in her office, high above the city. The skyline glittered beneath her, traffic humming like a constant symphony. On her desk lay stacks of documents, thank you letters, and images of rallies from every corner of the world. She sipped her tea and let out a quiet laugh. It was hard to believe that only months ago she had been the woman blocked at the doors of a gala, dismissed as an outsider by the powerful. And now she had become a global symbol of truth and justice. The door opened softly. Her assistant entered, carrying a framed photograph, the moment when the crowd in Washington chanted, "Truth wins," as she stood on stage. "I thought you might want this in your office to remember how far you've come." She took the frame, her eyes glistening. "No," she smiled gently. "This isn't for me to remember. It's for the world to remember. When we stand for truth, every door can open." She hung the picture on the wall. And in that moment, peace washed over her. No more bitterness, no more fear. Only the certainty that her journey had planted seeds for the future. Beyond the glass, posters of Truth Wins still glowed across the city streets. And in the hearts of millions, her story stood eternal proof. Though truth may be blocked at the door, it will always find its way to the stage and to victory.